John was telling the story today, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I had open heart surgery in August. And he tells the story, and he's going on, and he talks about a bicuspid valve. I said, I had a bicuspid valve. He had an aneurysm of 6 centimeters. I had an aneurysm of 6 centimeters. He had the surgery at Cleveland Clinic. I was like, this is getting weird. And then he put the picture of Dr. Roselli on, and that was my doctor and my physician at the Cleveland Clinic. So we didn't know each other before, but we bonded over that, and it was a pretty remarkable experience. So job well done. I'll be looking for you to raise the bar next year when I come back in terms of meeting my personal customer experience expectation.
So incidence of that in this room is about 2%. Just a quick to introduce myself. My name is David Edelman. I'm founder of Thrivable. My background here is who is here because they love pharma companies making as much money as possible? And stand up. Okay. Who is here because they care about getting life-saving treatments into the hand of patients and making a difference? Let's stand up. Actually, it's 2 o'clock. We can all just relax and let it out. Okay. All right. And I have a personal story. I met someone in my early 20s who was diagnosed, shaking it out, that's good. Met someone in my early 20s who was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And we were trying to sort out the things you sort out when you're in your 20s. You left the bar, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you had 2 slices of pizza, 1 or more beers. How much insulin do you take? How much insulin do you take? That's not in the label. So we started an online community called Diabetes Daily to connect and empower people around diabetes. It ended up a hobby that ran a month. We were reaching, I think at our peak, 1.8 billion visitors a month. Life science companies started coming to us and saying, hey, we want to understand this patient experience, right? And we quickly realized it's actually like the journey map version. It's actually the squiggly version, like what's actually going on here. And so that was the kind of the origin of Thrivable. We have 130,000 cardiometabolic patients who have raised their hand to participate in research, and we work with most of the people in the cardiometabolic space to share those stories, to really understand that why behind patient behavior. So super excited to share with you some data today. Kevin, why are you here?
Well, I have a different passion and history. I have a background similar to many of you. So I worked in big pharma at Lilly and Company for over 20 years. Just left Lilly in December, shortly after my open heart surgery. No connection to those two things. But I've always been passionate about knowing what makes people tick and understanding how that knowledge can help either create or change beliefs and behaviors. And so in the last few years at Lilly, I was the vice president of what we called Connected Medicine, which was our digital efforts to try to connect our medications and our patients more effectively to help them get to better outcomes. And specifically during the last part of my career there, and then as the co-founder of Clickspring Collective, very kind of narrowly interested in adherence and persistence. So I know we've talked a lot about that today, but I think understanding the reasons why people either stay or don't stay on medications is something we've talked a lot about over the course of decades, quite frankly. But I think the environment's changing to where we can do something different about it. And so that's where my passion lies. And so I wanted to, come in here from the experts here, and then you asked me to sit on stage with you as well. So that's it.
Kevin's sharp, and he's been in this lane and thought about these problems. So I think we're going to get some interesting reactions to the data that we collected. So we want to talk about GLP-1s. It's kind of all the rage. First, let's just note that GLP-1s, 20% reduction in all-cause mortality. Like really an incredible thing to get in the hands of people, and it really has been about the start, right? How to get people on GLP-1s, but most people who go on a GLP-1 go off, right? So how do we sustain that experience? And so that's what we kind of dug in today. Any kind of comments on the shape of this market from your vantage point?
Well, I think it's been said today, I think as people that are passionate about patients and consumers, this category in particular in this market is operating at a scale that I think is going to affect all therapeutic areas in terms of what consumers expect from pharma, but also in terms of how they're gathering and gaining information and knowledge, and how all of us are going to respond to those expectations as well. Sometimes those things happen in small scale ways at companies or in certain therapeutic areas, but this is a massive one, and I think most pharma companies that are playing in this space are trying to do the best that they can at a very rapid pace, and we're seeing some big gains there. I think to compete in this space, but also maybe in some of the other therapeutic areas, people who can figure this out the best stand a chance to win, even against some of the biggest players, including the one that I used to work for.
Okay, so we're going to talk about some patient experience data. So to prep for this, the other day we fielded a 250-person quant survey, plus used a AI qualitative voice interviewer to collect hundreds of patient stories from GLP-1 patients, primarily people on product, and then a couple recent former users. So let's see here. Next slide. Thank you. So just want to start here. This is kind of some top line. Believe it or not, weight loss isn't one of the important goals. So you know, sitting around a Lilly table and reading I don't want to get in trouble. Post Lilly, sitting here today, not speaking for a company that you're no longer at. How do you read a graph like this?
Well, first of all, I've spent 20 years at Lilly. I'm well trained. You're not going to get me in trouble, so I can dance around any subject. This type of data comes across our desks all the time, right? And I look at it and I say, well, 40% of people say that weight loss is the most encouraging aspect of their use of GLP-1, and not surprising because people are taking the medication for weight loss. But a majority of people state other reasons, which is somewhat interesting. But I even find more interesting than that is to understand the stated encouraging factor is weight loss, but what is the derived factor about weight loss? Why is that important to them? What is the next layer down? Why is weight loss so important to you? And you know, sometimes we play the question of the 5 whys, and when you get to the bottom of the 5th why, then you really find the emotional thing that makes someone tick. And so when I look at this graph, a lot of us might go, okay, well, weight loss is 41.6%, not surprising. How do we reinforce and build experiences around that? And then we may do some additional research on the other side. And what I ask myself or my team, or sometimes Thrivable, is, can you tell me more about why weight loss is so important and why that's the most encouraging part of their journey? Because I think there's something underneath that that we might be able to tap into differently than just tracking and reporting on weight loss.
Yeah, so let's double click on that. So we looked at kind of the early part of the patient journey. So you're fresh on product, and we collect a lot of stories, and one of the phrases that bubbled up was this idea of, in a patient's words, food noise, or some variation around it. Like the clinical term is probably appetite reduction, right? We've experienced appetite reduction. But half of patients who had been on product for less than 3 months mentioned less food noise as the most encouraging part of using the GLP-1. And only a quarter of those who had been on the meds for more than 3 months shared that. So next please. There's a quote here that I loved, and it says, honestly, the most encouraging moment was when I realized my habits were starting to change without it feeling like a constant battle. One day I noticed I was full halfway through a meal, and I just stopped eating, which is something I used to struggle with myself at Mediterranean last night. It made me feel like the medication was actually helping me reset my relationship with food and gave me a lot of motivation to keep going. So, you know, your CX hat on, like, what do you do with that?
Well, I don't want to insult people in your knowledge about this space or not, so I'm just going to state some things that I think are true in that. This is not an atypical response. A lot of times you hear people saying they're not hungry or they don't eat as much, and people associate the fact that it's because they're nauseous or they don't feel well, and so therefore they can't eat because they don't feel well. And in many instances, it's not that. Sometimes it is. In many instances, this food noise and this thought about food disappears, and sometimes that happens pretty quickly. So the positive thing from an experience standpoint is this product works, these products work, and they give you the sense that they're working almost right away, which is a very positive thing from an experience standpoint. But even though we know food noise and this disappearance of food noise and not thinking about as food is important, if you don't know that, or sometimes even when you do, as pharma customer experience experts that we are, we start serving up food trackers and calorie counters and all of the things that we think make sense because we may want to know what's happening, we may want to track the data, but it may be very counterproductive to what is really going on, which is someone doesn't want to think about food. We've made that mistake in my past. I won't say the company, but I've made that mistake in the past personally. And I think that we'll probably repeat it again, but knowing this at least gives you an opportunity to do something differently about it. Now, the other thing I would say is, this one data point, you can run with it and say, okay, well, let's start reinforcing this. Let's support people with their journey and the not thinking about food. Let's do all the right things. There's a negative side to this. Can anyone think of what the negative side is? You don't have to yell it out, but just think for a moment. What about food noise and thinking about food could be negative? It's why you're taking the medicine. Well, in many cultures, food and thinking about food and food is a big part of their social life, whether it's with their family, whether it's with their friends, and a disruption and not wanting to be a part of that or not wanting to eat is a really emotional thing for people because their family members might be asking them questions about why they've changed. Their friends might expect them to go out and do things that they usually had a lot of fun doing, and now they're sitting there maybe eating a small bite of food but not indulging the way that they used to. So you have to be, I say that because there's two sides to every story, and if you're thinking about it from an experience standpoint, if you assume everybody has forgotten about food or the food noise is gone, and if you assume that that's a great thing and you start reinforcing that, there is a group of people or a segment of people that might not be the case for, that you disenfranchise. So the trick is, as you know, is to try to understand who fits in those categories. There may be others, and serving up content to them that means something for them. And that is a very dynamic thing in our worlds, building dynamic content that serves multiple purposes, and knowing and using data that identifies who those people are, I think is the future of where we need to go. But there's two sides of this story when I look at it from my experience that maybe you may not see at a first glance.
Yeah, it actually reminded me, we talked recently to a KOL who shared, oh, yeah, GLP-1s are the joy killers. And, true, right? You think about the research around, helping with addiction, but it takes away a lot of pleasure, right, around a lot of different things. And so we've seen anecdotal evidence of people taking their shots on Mondays because they want to wear off in time for Saturday or Sunday so you can go out and have your weekend a little bit. And so, these are kind of complex emotional experiences, buried in these simple numbers. So another driver, we talk about weight at the front, but weight is just a number, right? And it's a proxy for a much more complex, resonant, emotional experience, a human experience. And just like the data around food noise bubbled up to the top, another phrase that bubbled up was feeling human again, feeling like myself again. And I don't know, to take a moment to absorb that. If someone is telling you they feel human again, what did you feel like before? Next slide, please. And so, here's one of the quotes around that. In case you're curious, these are all actual audio transcriptions, so you get the kind of the flavor of the person talking. But it was the first time that I was able to buy jeans in years. Up until that point, I was wearing pants that were just jersey material. And then I started being able to wear jeans again. And it was just really nice to be wearing pants with a zipper. And it sounds so pathetic saying that, but it was just really nice being able to be wearing clothes again that made me feel like a human being again. And there's a lot of emotion buried in there, feeling pathetic, feeling like a human again. Where do you go with that? I feel like the kind of the weight loss number is kind of woefully insufficient to capture this.
Well, it is, and this is sort of my point when we looked at the big pie graph about what's underlying weight loss and why that's so important to people. This is one example of why it can be important. Relationship with clothing is a driver for a lot of people, and it's not just women, it's men and women, quite frankly. And sometimes it's getting back into clothing that you haven't been able to wear for a while to make you perhaps feel youthful or back to where you used to be when you felt more healthy. Sometimes it's about being able to buy new clothes and new wardrobes to celebrate a success and being able to get to a new place. There's a lot that still underlies and wraps around this that it's hard to answer exactly what's going on. But I think about goal setting. And so when you put a digital solution in front of someone in this space, and the first thing you say is, hey, what's your weight loss goal? And we have regulations in this space as well, so you can't set a weight loss goal that's more than what the label says, or that would be a big problem, which is a problem in and of itself. But you ask them what the weight loss goal is. And they put it in, and then you start tracking their weight, and if they're really engaging with your digital solution, you might see where their weight goes. But if you not only ask that, because that's an important goal, but if you ask a secondary question about secondary goals, and this popped up, what would you do different about it? If you knew that this person cared about clothing, and in particular, getting back to a normal setting, feeling normal again and feeling human again, what might you do from an experience standpoint? That's the questions that we ask ourselves when we're building solutions that attack this problem. And what comes to mind to me are things, I was on the tarmac or on the taxiway in Newark Airport yesterday, going to the airport. As soon as my phone kicked on, I got a message from Uber, and it said, hey, welcome to Newark, and here's where the Uber pickup point is, and if you need a ride, go ahead and click it. So it knew geolocation where I was. It knew that I typically get an Uber from an airport predicted a need, and then provided an opportunity for me one click to get a ride and told me where to pick it up. Well, we can do similar things in pharma. It's a little more tricky. We've got more regulations, and it's quite frankly not all the capabilities that some of those groups do. But if you can imagine if this was someone's goal and you knew that they were approaching that goal, reaching it, and they were shopping and walked by Lululemon and you served up a $20 coupon to go and buy a new pair of pants, what kind of impact would that have on somebody? And if you did that differentially based upon what the goals were, what kind of impact would you have on your customers? We talk about trust in pharma being so low. I actually don't believe it's that they don't trust that we have good interest. That may have been the case. I think it's just they don't trust that we understand what they want and we're not delivering the things that they need or that they want to get from us. And I think that if you have this knowledge, the question you really have to challenge yourself is, how can I actually deliver on this? And how can I do it in a way that fits the capabilities of my company, that I can do it in a compliant way, and in a way that's rewarding for someone and doesn't overstep from a privacy standpoint.
So let's maybe click on the app piece a little bit, these digital solutions.
Sure.
So, I imagine many in this room touch these, and there is an opportunity for improvement over the current baseline. One stat that popped up in this study, although 50% of patients used apps, fewer than 10% of patients found those apps to be more helpful than talking to their doctor, friends or family, being part of an online community, and even going it alone. And actually, like, breaking it out, the thing that kind of really had my eyes open, that going it alone ranked more helpful than apps among app users. Just say it one more time. Going it alone ranked more helpful than apps among app users. Now, don't feel like you need to defend yourself here, Kevin, but what do you...
Well, you go to the next slide, put the data up so people can see exactly how poor I was at my job, my last job.
It's a quote. I didn't want to throw you under the bus.
That's all right. We know, so I put several companion apps in the marketplace in my career. And when I hear data or see data like this, it's not surprising. I would be really bad at my job if I thought everything was going swimmingly well and people were using these products, even though we kept putting them out there. But the thing there's a couple of things that I think are important that come to mind for me. And it gets back to this trust thing. Somebody may look at it and go, oh, they don't trust you, they don't want to deal with pharma, these apps aren't providing any value. Well, the reality is many people do download them. Maybe half of our patients will download the app. We have hundreds of thousands of users, and I say we, the royal we. We have hundreds of thousands of users that download these products, and about half of them might actually use them on a regular basis. And even less probably on a regular basis after 6 months. And it gets down into these numbers. And what's going on there? I think it's a matter of, not that they don't trust, it's that they're willing to explore, and then they get there, and what it is, it's all of your content that you already have approved, just in a different format. You know, you've got some recipe planners, you've got some goal setting, you might have some exercise videos, all of your key content that you have on your website and other places you put in a digital format, and it's just not adding value. It's not when they need it. It's not hitting on some of the things that we talked about before. So I think the trick is not necessarily to throw apps out with the bathwater. Apps are tactics at the end of the day. There's different ways to attack these things digitally. But I think it's getting back to what we said, is understand the reasons why and start to serve up content that makes them valuable. And in particular, if you know that people like to self-serve, I mean, how many of us, this is going to be a controversial question. How many walk into a department store and prefer not to have someone come up and say, can I help you with something? And then, very good. How many people prefer that somebody comes up and says, hey, can I help you find something? Right, some people do, some people, very courageous of you. I thought there would be more, but you're very courageous of you. Some people just like to do things on their own. They like to ask their questions in anonymity. They like to get the answers and do follow-up. We saw the heart story with AI tools. Those things exist. And I think the trick is not just doing apps and serving up different content, but if people really like to explore on their own, how can you create an environment, if they want to explore in your environment, that they can actually explore on their own and find out answers to their questions from what should be one of the most trusted sources to get the answers, which is the manufacturer of the medicine. That is flipping apps on its head, and it may not even be an app. It could be an AI solution, an agent solution, whatever it might be. But allow people to get information and sort through information and get support in a way that's more meaningful for them. So I don't take offense by the data. I'm not surprised by the data. I think that some companies are trying to figure out, given that fact, how do I make the tools that we provide actually fit the way that people are starting to change the way that they get information.
Awesome, thank you, Kevin. So I want to make sure there's time for some Q&A. So, this is a little bit about what Thrivable does. If you're interested in the report with some of this, more of this data, kind of verbatims, there's a QR code there. You're welcome to download it. And thank you, Kevin, for helping us mine the golden nuggets of patient experience.
My pleasure. It's been a joy. Thanks for having me.
And happy to take any questions.
Good to see you.
Thank you for sharing your insight and your candid approach to reality. It's helpful. Thank you. This whole conversation for today and leading to this, I just want to thank you all in Pharma. I worked in health system space for 20 years. I worked for Hopkins, Penn, consulted Stanford, Duke, all the biggies. The folks over at Sloan Kettering, and Thompson, who's a Penn guy. They're all amazing people, but they don't have the budgets you do. They don't have the insight you do because they don't have the data you do. They don't have the reach you have. And so I think the next conference, we need to have some of those people here with you. I think what you're sharing is what I've been hearing, but they couldn't implement. So imagine if we could put that together.
Thank you.
I hear a challenge there, Tom. So, we're taking notes.
I'll take it right back when you're finished.
There you
Steps.
So this is great from a standpoint from the branded, but with the GLP-1s, there's a tremendous amount of compound pharmacy going on there. So as people going on these medications, and I think one of the other speakers even alluded to it, that they got in the mail as a syringe and a vial and said, have at it. So there's an element of this that it is great from the standpoint of the product and the success that it's had, but there's also a responsibility, I think, that the industry needs to have in being able to maintain this, because it is still a very new compound. We're talking 2006 when Viagra came out. There's really no long-term data, and being unmonitored, yes, this is great for the weight loss data, but the long-term health aspects of it and that we don't know, unmonitored gets really scary. So I guess from a patient experience standpoint, from someone who is, and I use this term lightly, but going rogue on it and going from another source because they can't get it paid for by their insurance or what have you, like how would you address that standpoint?
Very good question, and if I was at a pharma company, a tricky one, because I can't necessarily probably navigate and help them through their compound pharmacy journey. I can give them maybe some advice and support about some things they need to think about or things that they may want to consider. You may not be surprised that we would stop short probably in supporting them too much, because we don't feel that compound pharmacies are necessarily safe for people, in this category. Some are, but many aren't. So, if we knew that someone was, for example, engaging or starting to engage with Lilly products, and there's a number of ways to know that, but they were on a compound product, I think the best thing that we can do is support them through that and help them understand why a branded pharmaceutical might solve their needs, and then help them through that transition. And a big reason is going to be cost. I mean, it's absolutely probably the main reason why people are going through that channel is cost. I can tell you that helping people navigate, this is not going to be a surprise, but helping people navigate cost and access for medications, especially in this category, is job number one. In the companion app solutions that we would provide to the market, if we knew that someone had a prescription because they told us that through that product, but we knew that they hadn't picked it up, and we followed up with them through that digital experience, and we knew it was because of cost, if I was to take them and put them into direct contact with our access solutions, and then I saw that they came back and started tracking, they said they had a prescription and started to track. We talked about metrics earlier. That is a direct impact of someone not picking up their medicine and taking it, sending them to the solutions and helping them get there. It's very simple. When there's a big pharmaceutical access change, let's say that one of the big PBMs switches products, If we know that and we know what their insurance coverage is and we can help them navigate that change, it's not going to necessarily be to keep them on because they probably won't, but navigate when they should think about switching, when do they need to talk to their doctor, what does a new prescription look like, what questions do they need to be asking. Those things actually create really good experiences, but they're short-lived. So there are tools I think that we could help support, but at the end of the day, if someone's choosing to use compound pharmacy, most of the pharmaceutical companies are going to be pretty hamstrung or hand-tied in terms of providing a lot of support directly to them. I think it's a world fraught with lawsuits and dangers. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just the reality.
I don't think there is an answer.
Yeah, it's just the reality.
I don't want to be a jerk for
No.
asking.
I just don't think that there's going to be a lot of momentum to try to support people there. If anything, you try to get them off of those compound pharmacies.
Lucas, I'll give you just one more angle. The gentleman from Evidation Health, he mentioned, the retrospective data versus the predicting what's going on in the future. I feel like in a market like GLP-1s, it is so complex and changing so quickly, and access is changing so quickly that it's kind of interesting. You're talking to someone and they're working on journey maps from a year ago or 2 years ago that are kind of very predictable and boiled down, but you have a Wild West market where there are new entrants and there are supply issues and changes in reimbursement and changes in laws, and it's happening like month by month by month. And so I think making sure that you have a good way to listen to and understand the market, there may be limited ways to respond, but there are ways to respond. And I think you're gonna have a better strategy if it's fueled by kind of an accurate knowledge of what's happening today in the Wild West, not, what was I planning on 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping
Thank
us
you,
see the data behind the data. Thank you. And now it's my